The franchise tags have been handed out, and we are ready for NFL free agency. Hey guys, welcome back. And today I'm giving my predictions on where 30 of the top free agents are going to land. These are just predictions. I'm going to get a lot of these wrong, but these are just kind of ideas that I have based on rumors we're hearing, ideas that I think could work on defensive sides, offensive sides of the football, and I'm really excited to get into it. If there is a specific player that I did not touch on that you guys would like to see who I think they're going to end up with, comment them down below. Would love to hear what you guys think down below. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new. We just hit 2,000, so a big thank you to everyone that has made that dream a reality. But we're on to 5,000 now, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's go ahead and get into it with Chris Jones, who I think is going to end up re-signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't really think there's any reason for him to leave. Back-to-back Super Bowls, three-time Super Bowl champ, been one of the best defensive players in the National Football League over the course of the last 5 or so seasons. It looks like he's going to get like a 3-year, $82 million contract extension there in Kansas City. Now, because they gave the franchise tag to L'Jarius Sneed, they do have the ability to bring Chris Jones back, but Chris Jones could take interviews with other teams, and I fully expect him to. I think Detroit is going to be a team to watch here that could make some noise. Arizona as well. We know Jonathan Gannon loved to have those big guys in the middle. We saw what he did with Javon Hargrave and Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, those guys in the middle. I could see Arizona calling, but I don't see Chris Jones leaving the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he is going to sign a deal that is going to keep him in Kansas City for the long run, and I think he stays with the Chiefs. Kirk Cousins, I think, is going to the Falcons. Now, for those of you real G's that have kind of been around here, I had a video about Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons up for about 8 hours before I decided to take it down, but I do firmly believe Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. You're just connecting dots here and there. It looks like Minnesota is all in on this quarterback class. We've been hearing rumors that last year they wanted to trade up to get Anthony Richardson. This year it seems like J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels is the apple of the Vikings' eye. On top of that, Kirk Cousins, if you talk about a quarterback that fits Zach Robinson's scheme, I don't think there's a better one than Kirk Cousins on the market. He's that game manager type of quarterback who does just a little bit more. One of the top 12 quarterbacks, pairing him with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. That is a electric offense with Raheem Morris, a defensive-minded coach who is going to turn that defense around. I'm all in on Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. And just a cherry on top, his wife is from Atlanta. So I think there is some news here. There is a lot to build off of. I think Kirk is going to end up with the Falcons and probably like a 3-year, $120 million deal. The difference between the Vikings, who I think would be interested in bringing him back, I think Atlanta is going to be willing to give him that contract fully guaranteed. And I don't think Minnesota is going to do that. So I've got Kirk Cousins headed to the Falcons. Washington is going to pick up Danielle Hunter. It looks like Minnesota is not only going to lose Kirk Cousins, it looks like Danielle Hunter is out the door as well. And I think Washington makes the most sense. You just hired Dan Quinn as your head coach. That's the defensive guy. This is a team that traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young at the deadline. They're looking to add a new edge rusher. Danielle Hunter, one of the top 12 edge rushers in the game, consistently towards the top of the league in sacks, pressures. This is a guy, though, that has played that outside linebacker position primarily for the Vikings. I know one of the top questions is, how is he going to fit in a 4-3 scheme there in Washington? He's got the size to play all over the defense. I think Danielle Hunter to Washington is one of my favorite landing spots, period. I think this would be an awesome spot for him to end up. I think Washington is going to be active. I believe they have the most cap space in the NFL. They're going to be looking to improve the defense. They've got a couple of free agents of their own that we'll see if they bring them back, but I think Danielle Hunter is out the door of Minnesota. I think he heads to DC. Christian Wilkins, I did a TikTok about this. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that the Miami Dolphins did not franchise tag Christian Wilkins because he's going to go to the Houston Texans. It seems like that's where all the buzz is that Houston's going to be all in. He's a perfect fit for DeMeco Ryans' defense, a defense that is going to really prioritize boosting the trenches in the draft in free agency. Christian Wilkins, outside of Chris Jones is the best defensive tackle in the entire class. He's got size. He has been up towards the top of the league in sacks the last few seasons from the interior. Miami just has no cap room right now, and they ended up not franchise tagging him, and they're going to end up letting one of their best defensive players walk for nothing. Like I said, DeMeco Ryans a defensive-minded coach. He did a great job at helping build the trenches last year. We saw what they did trading up to 3 to get Will Anderson. I think they're going to be aggressive and offer a big contract to Christian Wilkins to bring him to Houston. L'Jarius Sneed is an interesting one because he did receive the franchise tag from the Kansas City Chiefs, but by all accounts, it looks like they are going to be trading him for some type of draft compensation. Now, I believe it's probably going to be a 2 and a 4, maybe a 2 and a 5. It's going to be a second rounder. And I think the Falcons are the team that right now has the best chance of landing him. As a Colts fan, you guys can see this is the guy that I want on my team, but I'm going to try and keep it realistic. I've got the Colts landing some more defensive backs later, but I think L'Jarius Sneed to Atlanta, you pair him alongside AJ Terrell, you got Jesse Bates on the back end. This Falcons secondary all of a sudden looks like one of the top units in the NFL. They've got pieces all over. And like I said with Kirk Cousins, their offense is a quarterback away. This defense is literally a couple plug-and-play players away from this team being a legit Super Bowl contender. I think Atlanta is going to be in a similar position where we saw Chicago last year, where Chicago gave up a ton of capital. They went out and got Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, and they went out and paid Cole Kmet. They went out and landed some big names. I think Atlanta is in a very similar boat this season. And L'Jarius Sneed, one of the biggest cornerback names on the market, I think he heads to Atlanta. Calvin Ridley to the Bears, to me, is a very interesting one. A lot of Jags fans were upset when Calvin Ridley was not franchise tagged, and it makes sense because you traded a second-round pick for him. He ended up being pretty solid for the Jaguars, in all honesty. This is a guy that just seems to always be open. He's got good size. He's a really good route runner and good speed. And I think that's exactly what Chicago was looking for. You pair him with DJ Moore. Darnell Mooney's coming up later. We'll see if he ends up returning. But you pair him with DJ Moore, that immediately eliminates you from needing to take a wide receiver there at number 9. You could go with the top edge player. You could go with a Byron Murphy. You could go with a corner. I think it opens things up. The Bears have, again, towards the top of the league in cap space. And I think they're going to be active to try and get Caleb Williams some weapons because it looks like Caleb Williams is going to be a member of the Chicago Bears. And I think Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore is a great duo to pair alongside him. I think Calvin Ridley goes to Chicago. Russell Wilson was done absolutely dirty by the Broncos. I know you had the Nathaniel Hackett thing, which was probably the worst head coaching hire of all time. Then you brought in Sean Payton. I actually thought that this Broncos team showed some life at times. Russell Wilson did a pretty good job, but he had his ups and downs, and the Denver Broncos cut him, taking an $85 million cap hit. Denver's not signing anybody, but I think Russ to Pittsburgh makes sense. You got Mason Rudolph. You got Kenny Pickett. Are any of those guys an answer? No, I don't believe so. I think Kenny Pickett is terrible. I think Mason Rudolph could be a nice bridge. Russell Wilson on a 1-year league minimum, why not take the chance there? I think this is a guy that Mike Tomlin would love, a great locker room guy. I think the city and what he does for the community is very important, and we know the Steelers love those kinds of guys. But on top of that, I still think Russ has something left in the tank. In an Arthur Smith scheme where it's going to be very run-heavy, I could see Russell Wilson thriving in a Pittsburgh offense. I could see New England, Vegas, Atlanta if they don't get Kirk Cousins. But I think the Steelers make the most sense here, depending on if they get Justin Fields or not. Baker Mayfield, some people want to make up the narrative that he wants to leave Tampa. I think there's no chance. This team brought back Mike Evans. This team has one of the better O-lines in the NFC right now. They had a pretty good line all season long. He's got continuity and certainty about his career for the first time in about 3 years. I think that's very important to Baker. We looked at this last offseason. He was an afterthought. People were like, Baker Mayfield, who cares where he goes? Because he's just going to be a backup. Because we saw him in Carolina and was terrible. In LA, he showed some flashes. He goes to Tampa, wins the starting job, takes this team to the playoffs. Baker Mayfield is back. I think he's going to get a good contract, a long-term deal, to be locked up in Tampa Bay for quite some time. And I think it's the right move for him, right move for his career. Baker Mayfield is my guy, my favorite player in the NFL to this day. I love this guy. I've been rooting for this guy since day one. I'm happy to see him in a situation where he's wanted. I think he's going to sign a big deal with Tampa to remain the quarterback long term. Mike Onwenu might be one of the best players in free agency regardless of position. I think Jacksonville is the team that to me just makes the most sense. We've heard that Trent Baalke doesn't want to cut Cam Robinson. If you get Mike Onwenu, they're going to cut Cam Robinson. I think here's the good thing about Onwenu. You could pay him tackle money. He could play that right tackle position. You can move Anton Harrison, your first-round pick from last year, to the left side, and you've already got your bookend tackles going into the year. You can draft a guard there in round 2 or 3 to replace Ezra Cleveland. You're feeling pretty good. But if you decide to keep Cam Robinson, Mike Onwenu can swing in and play right guard. He's a very versatile offensive lineman that has been very impressive for New England over the last few seasons. I fully expect him to join a team that has a legit chance at the playoffs. I think Jacksonville makes sense. I think Cincinnati makes a ton of sense as well. That's a team with a lot of cap space that I think could be really in on trying to add a player like this. I think there are going to be some teams, the Giants and the Jets are other teams as well that I think are going to be up there. But I think Jacksonville's a team that is going to be aggressive. You've got the 5th-year option on Trevor Lawrence. This is kind of your chance to see, what is this guy? Is he our long-term answer? He should be, but we'll see what ends up happening. But I think they're going to try and improve the trenches a little bit. And I've got Mike Onwenu headed to Jacksonville. DJ Reader, this is the shocker here. I think he goes to Detroit. Similar to Javon Hargrave last year, I think he gets a similar sort of contract. Detroit has a team that I think has surprisingly a ton of cap space. Like, that's something when I was looking at these cap numbers, I'm like, Detroit is loaded right now. They're playing with house money. This team is in the NFC Championship, and they've got one of the 10 highest cap. They've got some of the most cap space in the NFL. They're going to go make a splash, and I think DJ Reader has a very real chance to be that guy. This guy has been absolutely fantastic for Cincinnati over the last few seasons in terms of his run-stuffing ability. And he's one of the most important players, if not the most important players on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think people are talking about him enough. We knew there was going to be an odd man out in Cincinnati, and it looks like it's DJ Reader. I think Detroit is in a prime position to get him. Yeah, you got Aleem McNeil, who had a pretty solid season, but I don't think that stops you from going out and getting a Pro Bowl type of guy, a guy with elite ceiling and has shown some elite potential here. For a team that was just in the NFC Championship game, this might be the move that could take them to the next level. I think he heads to Detroit. Derrick Henry to the Ravens, to me, has been a move that we've been hearing about for about a year, and I think it makes too much sense. Derrick Henry is the perfect type of player for this Ravens offense. They love to run the ball down the middle. They are a team that is very outside zone runs. They are run it down your throat, smash mouth football. And that's what Derrick Henry is. He didn't have his best season, and he still had a pretty fantastic season for Tennessee last year. I think Baltimore is in a pretty good spot. Again, a team I was surprised with the amount of cap space they had. I think they bring back most of their guys. There's a couple of guys here and there that I think might walk, which we'll see later on. But I think Derrick Henry to Baltimore is one of my favorite fits. I think him and Lamar would be an excellent tandem. You pair that with Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. Maybe Baltimore can finally get to that Super Bowl, get Derrick Henry a chance to win a ring before his career is over. I like Derrick Henry to Baltimore. Everyone's talking about Houston. Saquon to Houston. Everyone knows Saquon's gone from the Giants. I don't think that's a surprise. I think it's a foregone conclusion. He is gone. But I think it's the Chargers. The Chargers are a bigger market than Houston in terms of, I know maybe not a bigger football fan base, but I think if you put Christian McCaffrey in LA, or you put one of these top guys in LA, this Chargers team gets a lot of buzz. I know the Chargers are a cursed franchise, but they're going to look to clear some cap space, I do believe, whether that's cutting Mike Williams, trading or cutting Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. I think this team is going to make a lot of moves. I think Saquon to the Chargers is one of my favorite fits. We have heard this entire offseason. Can you imagine Justin Herbert with a run game? And obviously the Austin Ekeler stands and the fantasy football players are going to be like, does Austin Ekeler not exist? Austin Ekeler is a great receiving back, but I don't think he's this amazing running back. Saquon Barkley, I think we forget just how good of a running back he is because he has been stuck in a New York offense that just has not been good. And on top of that, this is a guy that has dealt with some injuries. I'm not sure how long the contract is going to be, but I think the Chargers are the team that makes it happen. You just hired Greg Roman as your OC. He's a guy that wants to run the football. I think Saquon of the Chargers is a match made in heaven. Josh Jacobs, I tried to find a spot for him. I could see Arizona potentially making a move here. I could see Tampa. I could see, a few teams in that sort of range, maybe Green Bay, but I just don't see Josh Jacobs leaving. He's coming off of a down year for his standards after leading the NFL in rushing, and I just don't really see a scenario where leaving is the best option for him. I don't think he's going to get paid the money that he thinks he is. The Bears could be a team that could maybe offer him a deal, and I actually don't mind that, but I think ultimately him and Vegas get a deal done, and he's going to stay a Raider, at least for the next season. DeAndre Swift, to me, this is a rumor that I've been hearing quite a bit, and I really like this. DeAndre Swift to Washington. Washington just hired Cliff Kingsbury. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to run RPOs. DeAndre Swift did it very well with Philadelphia last year. Had a really good season, and this is a team that's losing Antonio Gibson. You've got Brian Robinson, who I feel is more of that third down back, short yardage back, power back. DeAndre Swift can be more of that every down player, your receiving back. If you get a rookie quarterback, I think DeAndre Swift is kind of your new quarterback's best friend because you can lean on him in the run game, but he also can be a guy that you get the ball to in the open field as a receiving back. I think DeAndre Swift is a great fit for Washington. I think this is one that is going to be very interesting to see what happens, but I think that this is a move that is going to end up happening ultimately. Austin Ekeler goes to the Houston Texans, I believe. Devin Singletary had a pretty solid season. I think he might have played himself out of Houston, to be completely honest. I could see a team like Cleveland giving him a contract with uncertainty around Nick Chubb and his injury. And Austin Ekeler to the Texans is a really interesting move for me. Good receiving back, a team that loved to pass the football this past season, and you get one of the best dual threat running backs in the NFL. Ekeler had a bit of a down year, lost a step it seemed at times, but I still think Eckler's got some potential here. I could see him signing a 1 or 2 year deal in Houston to kind of give himself a chance to get back to the playoffs. So I like this move for the Texans. Stefon Gilmore, to me, goes to the Chiefs. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, if we can get Stefon Gilmore, why would we trade L'Jarius Sneed? It's contract. I think L'Jarius Sneed is much more valuable at this point simply due to his age. Gilmore, I think, might have 2 or 3 years left in the league, and I think he's going to ring chase, and he's going to be willing to take a discount to try and win a Super Bowl before he retires, and I think the Chiefs give him the best chance to do that. This is a team that has an elite secondary already, and I think the rich get richer here. I like Gilmore to the Chiefs, and sticking in Kansas City, I like Darnell Mooney to the Chiefs. The cap space isn't real. The Chiefs are going to somehow end up getting a guy like Calvin Ridley or Darnell Mooney or something, and we're all going to be like, how did Kansas City pull this off? It just makes sense, right? Darnell Mooney is a guy that I feel has been criminally underused in Chicago. This guy's got good speed. He's a good separator and one of the better slots in the NFL. And I just love the idea of him and Patrick Mahomes. I think that could be one of the most lethal tandems in the NFL right now, because I don't think we really realize how good Darnell Mooney can be in the right system. I think Mooney is a good receiver that's got a lot of potential to be a great one if he gets in the right offense. I think Kansas City comes calling, gives him a favorable deal, maybe a 4-year, $45 million contract, something around there, and Darnell Mooney ends up in Kansas City. Kendall Fuller, to me, I like his fit in Pittsburgh. Now, I'm not sure how cap-wise this is going to end up working, but this is a team that loves to run a little bit of off-man zone. I think that's what Kendall Fuller is going to provide. He also provides some youth into that secondary, or not some youth, some experience into that secondary that is already filled with a lot of youth in Joey Porter Jr. I think he could be a great mentor for a young guy like Joey Porter Jr. I think he fits the Steelers' culture exceptionally well. I really like this move for Pittsburgh. I think Washington is going to end up losing both of their defensive backs ultimately. I think Fuller, the Colts make sense. I could see Vegas getting involved, but I like the Steelers the most as a fit. Jonathan Grenard, I think, stays in Houston. He's coming off a career year, got played more, was used really well in DeMeco Ryans' defense. I think he's going to be willing to work out a contract to stay in Houston. One of the more impressive teams in the National Football League last season. I don't think he has any reason to leave Houston. I also just couldn't really come up with a spot on where this guy is going to end up. I tried to think maybe Detroit, opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson. That was really the only landing spot that made any sense to me. But I think Jonathan Grenard stays in Houston. Xavier McKinney, very surprised that the Giants did not franchise tag him. I was almost positive that he was going to get franchise tagged, especially because they didn't franchise tag Saquon. Nope, they're like, you know what, we're just going to let McKinney walk. I think the Colts are going to get this deal done. They are looking to pair a nice veteran safety alongside Julian Blackmon, who had a really solid season. And when Xavier McKinney has been on the field, he has been one of the better safeties in the National Football League. This is a team that I think is desperate for some secondary help, especially on the back end. I think Xavier McKinney provides that. I think McKinney's going to end up in Indy somehow. And as a Colts fan, I would be thrilled if this were to happen. Gabe Davis to the Giants, I really don't think there's any other landing spot for him, to be completely honest. I don't know what the market's going to be for Gabe Davis. I really don't. He had an up and down season after many expected him to have a breakout year for the third year in a row. And Khalil Shakir was that guy who broke out for Buffalo, but it was not Gabe Davis. I think Brian Daboll is going to be like, you know what? I'm going to go get my guy, bring Gabe Davis in to help Daniel Jones or whoever the quarterback is for the Giants next season. And I don't mind this fit. I think he gives them some size in that receiver room, which is something I desperately think they need. I think he could be a nice addition to this team. I think it's probably a one-year deal, though. I don't think he signs long-term anywhere just because I think there's a lot of uncertainty around the type of player that Gabe Davis actually is. Marquise Brown to the Patriots. The Patriots have a lot of money, and I was listening to Bill Simmons talk about this. It's a position where nobody wants to go to New England. Interim GM, unproven coaching staff. They're going to have to overpay for players because over the last 10 years, Robert Kraft has been one of the cheapest owners in the NFL. I don't think they're going to be able to land very many players, but I think Marquise Brown could be a guy that they are able to bring in. Marquise Brown has shown some elite flashes. We know how fast this guy is. He can get off the line super quickly. I kind of like that with Tyquan Thornton. And then you've got Pop Douglas as well there. I think they could just continue to add speed into that receiver room. Marquise Brown is either going to be a Patriot or a Panther next season. Pick your poison. I think it's one of those two teams. But I'm going to lean with New England here, just simply due to that they have more cap space to pay him. Speaking of Arizona, Bryce Huff, one of the most underrated players in the entire market, had an incredible season, a superstar for the Jets that I don't think a lot of people realize. I think Arizona makes the most sense here. Arizona, I had getting Brian Burns before Brian Burns got the franchise tag. I think the Jets are not going to bring him back. I don't even think they're going to offer him a contract because I don't think they can. This is why they drafted Will McDonald last season. I think Arizona is looking to improve this defense one way or another, inside and out, and I think Bryce Huff gives them the best opportunity to do that. And I think of all the edge rushers, he's the most perfect fit. We saw what he did with Hassan Reddick in that designated pass rusher role, where he led the league in sacks. I think Bryce Huff could have an incredible all-pro type season next year with Jonathan Gannon because we know how favorable his defense is to getting sacks. I love Bryce Huff in Arizona. Going back to Indy, I don't think they're going to be able to bring back Grover Stewart. I tried to figure it out. Are they going to be able to bring back Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon, sign a couple free agents? I don't think it's possible. And I think Grover Stewart's the odd man out. I like him to Chicago, though. Reuniting with Matt Eberflus as defensive coordinator when he first came into the league. I don't think people really understand the value of Grover Stewart. He is a guy that is one of the better run defenders in football. And when you saw him go out for Indy, that run defense really took a hit. There's been a lot of rumors that the Colts have been looking at the defensive tackles, whether it be a Braden Fisk, a Chris Jenkins. They also drafted Adetomiwa Adebawore last year, who was one of my favorite players who had that inside-outside versatility. He showed flashes as a rookie. The Bears, I think, are looking to improve the interior. I think the Colts are going to let him walk, and I think Grover Stewart ends up in Chicago. Leonard Williams, they traded a second-round pick. He's not leaving Seattle. I would be this would be one of the biggest fumbles if Seattle lost him, especially because I think he fits Mike Macdonald's defense really well, considering what we just saw from Justin Madubuike. I don't think Leonard Williams is as athletic as Madubuike, but I think he could have a very good impact in this Mike Macdonald scheme. He's not leaving Seattle. They gave up too much to just let him walk. Cam Curl, I'm very surprised, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, look at his production. He's more of a box safety. He's not a ball hawking free safety. That's what Derek Forrest was for, and Derek Forrest is one of the more underrated safeties in the NFL. I think he goes to Detroit. With CJ Gardner-Johnson in free agency, you've got a really interesting dynamic here because you got Brian Branch, who is one of the more electric free safety nickel slot guys in the league, and then you get him on the back end as that strong box safety. I absolutely love it. If Detroit gets Cam Curl and DJ Reader, that defense immediately turns around with some health to some of the other guys there. I don't see any reason why Detroit can't be one of the best teams in the NFC yet again. I really like this fit for Cam Curl to Detroit. Chase Young, same thing with Leonard Williams. They gave up a third. This one's really hard because Chase Young was a guy that I thought showed real potential at times for San Francisco, and he showed some real boneheaded mistakes and just taking plays off. Didn't really seem super urgent at times with him, but he had a good impact on this team in the playoffs. I think they bring him back. I don't know what the contract looks like. I don't know the term, but I think there's going to be an agreement that brings Chase Young back to San Francisco. Tyron Smith feels like the most Jets pick ever. If you think about a player that the Jets would target, let's think of a guy that's maybe coming off some injuries, maybe that's a bit older, past his prime. That's the type of player that the Jets love to go after, and Tyron Smith is that guy. Now, no knock to Tyron Smith because he had a really good year last year for Dallas, and I still think he's got some potential to be a good left tackle. I don't know what the contract is going to look like. I think it could be a 1 or 2 year deal, but I think this team is going to try. Maybe they're going to be aggressive for Kevin Zeitler or a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry. I think this is a team that is really going to be active and trying to add some free agents on this offensive line because they desperately need to protect their greatest asset, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Chidobe Awuzie, I believe, will be an Indianapolis Colt. I think there's a lot of rumors going around about this as well. He fits Gus Bradley's defense perfectly. A zone corner that I think has elite potential there, and is a great veteran presence in the locker room. He's been to a Super Bowl, played in Dallas, played in Cincinnati. Yes, he's got some injuries there. I still think the Colts would prioritize a corner in the first or second round, but I still think Chidobe Awuzie is an instant upgrade in that secondary. If they come away with Kenny Moore re-signing, Chidobe Awuzie, Xavier McKenna, and then you got Juju Brents on the outside, that secondary all of a sudden looks a lot better than what they had last season. And I think the Colts are going to be very active in trying to add some talent to that defense. Patrick Queen is our final player of the day, and I believe he is going to end up with the Seattle Seahawks. This is the one player that I don't know if Baltimore is going to be able to bring back. Coming off a career year, a free agent, I think if you look at Seattle, they're losing some linebackers. Devin Bush, free agent. Jordan Brooks is also a free agent. Bobby Wagner's not your long-term solution there. Patrick Queen is coming off an all-pro season where he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL. I think he follows his coach to Seattle, and he is going to be the next member of the Seattle Seahawks. But guys, let me know. Which of these picks do you agree with? What do you disagree with? We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.